we're facing what I call the modern diet paradox. On the one hand, there's more dietary advice than ever. And on the other hand, we see that diet-related chronic disease is on the rise.
That's why we created the Nourishment Table to give you more dietary freedom while staying focused on the key priorities.
We should prioritize nutrient-dense foods, foods that provide enough protein, essential vitamins, and micronutrients to meet our body's needs. In my next journey, I want to explore what are nutrient-dense foods and why is it so important to include them in our diet. So, I traveled to North America to meet one of the world's leading experts on nutrient-dense protective foods, Professor Andrew Mente from McMaster University's Population Health Research Institute in Canada. I had to learn more about what his global studies in this field had revealed. Professor, your work on the PURE study has been called groundbreaking. Can you tell us what makes it so unique?
Well, the PURE study is the largest and most diverse prospective cohort study to look at diet and health outcomes. Because in most parts of the world where a lot of people live, there's undernutrition. So if anything, we need to add to their diet healthy foods. And so that was the emphasis in PURE, and try to find those protective foods.
So about these protective foods, which are more clear to me now, how do they fit with my previous conversation I had with Professor Leroy and the idea of nutrient-dense foods? Would they be similar, different, complementary? How does that work?
Nutrient density goes beyond simply looking at protective foods. If we could have a diet that is excluding nutrient-dense foods, like certain animal foods like red meat and poultry and eggs, for instance, and dairy foods, then we put ourselves in a position that we may not be able to meet our daily nutritional requirements on a variety of nutrients. So this includes essential fatty acids, polyunsaturated, monounsaturated fats, even omega-3 fats with poultry and red meat, which have that as well, and the amino acids that you find in animal-based foods. Meats, for example, have a complete amino acid profile with all 9 essential amino acids covered. And then certain micronutrients like vitamin B12, zinc, and iron, which are found abundantly in high nutrient-dense foods. We identified 6 foods that were associated with a lower risk of mortality, and those were fruits and vegetables, legumes, nuts, fish, and dairy products. So if we restrict our diet and don't include these foods, then we have a greater likelihood of having undernutrition and not meet our daily nutritional requirements.
And that would be not protecting ourselves,
ultimately. Absolutely. So nutrient-dense foods are important.
Those countries you were talking about are also the countries that are going to be having the highest increase in population. So we need to look kind of to the future to how are we going to create the correct nutrients for these people.
Absolutely. So solving the issue of undernutrition in many parts of the world and improving mortality in different world regions, it's one important aspect to do that is achieving a high quality diet that includes nutrient-dense foods.
Children require nutrient-dense foods rich in protein, vitamins, and minerals to support healthy growth and development globally. Limited access to these essential nutrients has led to widespread stunting, affecting 22% of all children under 5. That's 149 million children. This chronic malnutrition during crucial developmental stages can have lifelong impacts on physical and cognitive growth.
We need to look at how we can improve the situation for those children, and that will be by ensuring that they get an adequate supply of nutrient-rich foods, and critically amongst that, and this has been proven by interventional studies, that if you provide meat or dairy or eggs, that you can improve both the development and the brain development of those children, and you can certainly reduce childhood stunting and impaired life for those children. I think we have to make the nutrient-rich foods available, affordable, and desirable for those people.
Globally, 2 in 3 women have at least one micronutrient deficiency. This is especially true for iron, with alarming rates of anemia reported around the world. Although poverty and poor quality diets may account for this in some countries, in some so-called rich countries where women generally have a choice as to what they eat, anemia rates are spiraling out of control. In the UK, for example, hospital admissions due to anemia have doubled in the past decade, illustrating that many women are making ill-informed choices of what foods to eat in order to meet their daily essential nutrient needs.
I'm not someone who likes to focus purely on the negative. So I was keen to understand what happens when we get things just right, when what we eat fully contributes to our optimal health. I was lucky enough to catch up with Olympic snowboarder Jessica Keiser, who had some really interesting insights on her nutrition and fitness plan. I'm living in Italy, close to the mountains, and I've always been a keen watcher of winter sports, which are physically demanding.
I talked to you about this scientist I met, Andrew Mente. So his research really tries to show how what he proposes can be applied everywhere and for every geographical area in the world, but also for all incomes. Because then the affordability of food is also very important. It's also very important in how we allow the world to develop in the next 20 years as the population is growing. And his research, his scheme really goes to show how this base of proteins can be made available for every population and for all incomes. It made me, I don't want to use the word happy, but it made me at least feel that, again, we're taking into consideration everyone and not always applying the Europe-centric view.
I'm sure we should start here and not have a look of where the others, what they are doing. So like we start here, and here are the people really into vegetarian and the vegan stuff because of the newspaper or because they have seen a film somewhere. It's paid, or I don't feel very good when these films about the nutrition. I'm curious about it. Is it really like that, or is it just like they want to sell me a lifestyle?
I'll ask a tricky question, but so your teammates, for example, who follow a vegetarian diet, do they take their proteins from protein bars? Do they integrate with that kind of thing?
For sure they do. I mean, everybody has to save their proteins in a way, so they go for nuts or the beans. Yeah. I think there are a lot of protein bags or whatever. Or there are also the vegetarians meat. So it's everybody's single choice. I don't care about the others, what they eat, but leave me with my choice alone. I love to do the grill. I think meat is always on my table. I love meat.
To leave the final word with our expert on the importance of nutrient-dense foods to our diets, I asked Andrew Mente 2 more key questions.
Your work makes science accessible and actionable. What's the key takeaway?
Yeah, I would say that we need to emphasize what we were eating 100 years ago, which is a diet more in variety, rather than restricting to just a few foods, having a variety of different sources of foods across different food groups. And I think that would be the key to a healthy diet. Dietary restriction is just a road to not meeting nutritional needs. And our body needs nutrition. We have to obtain many of the nutrients that our body needs through food, because we don't store them and we don't make them naturally. So you need those food sources. So a diet of variety is really the only way to reach that end. And so that I would never recommend a restricted diet. and I would say emphasize variety.
If we met 5 years ago and we project another 5 or 10 years into the future, what would you hope is the biggest value of your work at that point?
That it makes a difference, and the dietary advice that we give to people and to populations reflects the actual evidence, rather than focusing on certain ideological perspectives, which are well-intentioned, like saving the planet, and we all, of course, want to do that. However, we know very little about that, and I think we need to come back to understanding the impact of diet on our actual health. And so I would hope that the dietary advice that we give is based on evidence and the impact of diet on our health. Really, that's what I would hope that over the next 10 years would manifest.
There is always more to be discovered. And remember, when it comes to your health, trust in science and not in fads. And trust your taste buds. They might be smarter than what you think.
All scientific foundations presented in this video are peer-reviewed. The most important references are an article on the nourishment table published in Animal Frontiers, first issue of 2025, and results from the Pure Epidemiology study published in the European Heart Journal in 2023. Several scientific presentations have been given on the nourishment table, for instance, in October 2024 at Colorado State University, USA. For more information, visit nourishyourchoice.org or explore the work of Professor Frederick Leroy at aleph2020.org.